In this video, we'll be looking at what makes a good piece of recount writing. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to understand why we write recounts and give some examples. You should also be able to explain what a recount looks like and what kind of language it uses. Now let's look at a good example of recount writing. A trip to the zoo. Yesterday, my family went to the zoo to see the elephant. When we got to the zoo, we went to the shop to buy some food to give to the animals. After getting the food, we went to the nocturnal house where we saw birds and reptiles which only come out at night. Before lunch, we went for a ride on the elephant. It was a thrill to ride. Dad nearly fell off when he let go of the rope. During lunch, we fed some birds in the park. In the afternoon, we saw the animals being fed. When we returned home, we were tired but happy because we had so much fun. The purpose of a recount is to retell something that happened. To do this, we pick out the most important events and write them in order. A very common type of recount is a diary entry, but it's also very important for news reporting and sports coverage. Some recounts are personal accounts, where the writer tells us about something they did and how they felt. A factual recount, like a lab report from a scientist, will just give the facts of what happened. A recount doesn't have to be true. You can write about a fictional event or even a fantastical one that you made up. A good recount, though, must always answer the questions who, when, where, and why. Now let's take a closer look at our example. First of all, the title is very simple. This is a recount about a trip to the zoo, so we call it A Trip to the Zoo. Some of our favorite books and movies have mysterious and complicated names, but for recounts, we use the most obvious title that we possibly can. Now, pause the video and see how many verbs can you spot in this example. Remember, a verb is a doing word. What do you notice about them? Here I have colored in all the verbs in the recount. The red ones are past tense verbs because recounts happen in the past. It's a good idea to practice the past tense the same week you learn how to write a recount, so I've left a link for a seesaw activity in the description. Now, let's take a quick break, get up and move for 20 seconds, because this has been a very language-heavy lesson so far, and all of our brains need a little breather. If you're ready to look at our example again, this time I'd like you to see how many words can you spot that are to do with time. It could be the time of day, or it could be to do with how much later something happened. Take your time, there are loads. If you see here, the first one is yesterday. The next phrase is when we got to the zoo. Then you have after that. Now pause the video and see if you can find the rest. Now let's look at the whole recount. Do you notice anything interesting about where the time words are? They are at the start of sentences. In fact, they're usually at the start of a new line. Every event in the story starts on a new line and begins by writing about time. That is, telling us when it happened. It could be as simple as a word like then, or an interesting phrase like on a cold and dark morning. Sometimes we use special phrases for the beginning and end of recounts. This language is very useful when we write stories as well. Pick out a few of your favorite examples and make a point of using them the next time you're writing a story or a recount. So, what have we learned? A recount is a retelling of what happened. It places the events in order, it uses past tense verbs. It always answers the questions who, when, where, and why. It must always have a simple title, and a good recount will have transition words, which are references to time, after, then, later. Click on the next video and we're going to write a recount one step at a time.